Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. Ja Morant. Insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parish. The Grizzlies won their third consecutive game and did so in a classic grit grind fashion as they held the Miami Heat to 93 points, the fewest points the Grizzlies have allowed in a game this year. And of course, they did it shorthanded. No Ja Morant, who was resting on the second night of a back-to-back. No Konchar, also resting. No Jaren Jackson Jr., who is being held out on the second night of a back-to-back for injury management. Of course, Desmond Bane is not back yet. Zaire Williams popped up on the injury report in a good way. He was doubtful for this game. The first time he's been listed as anything other than out. But no Zaire Williams. No Konchar, no Zaire Williams, no Jaren Jackson Jr., no Desmond Bane, no Ja Morant, no problem. The Grizzlies put together a fantastic team effort, a fantastic defensive effort. They get a monster game from Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones has a career-high 28 points. Tyus Jones gets 10 assists, also 5 rebounds. This is just the second 20-10 game of Tyus Jones' career. Tyus Jones, who's having a career year scoring the basketball, goes off, provides the offensive punch that is desperately needed in this low-scoring affair. The 101 points in a victory, that's the fewest points the Grizzlies have had in a win so far this year. They've been winning with offense most of the time. Yes, their defense has been much improved over where it was in the first couple weeks of the season. But this one was a grinded out. They got them in the mud. They played that G&G ball. And they did it, utilizing the depth. Unsung heroes, Kennedy Chandler, had a career game. The second rounder puts in 9 points, 5 assists, and 2 steals and a block. Registers a team best plus 18 in the plus minus. Vince Williams Jr. getting some real minutes when the game was competitive. The Grizzlies bench, they just went 9 deep. LaRavia also wasn't available. They go 9 deep off the bench with Kennedy Chandler, Brandon Clark, Xavier Tillman, and Vince Williams Jr. And those guys outperform the Miami Heat bench. Very similar to the home win over the 76ers, where the opponent got nothing from their bench. The Heat only get 11 points off their bench. Their bench players make 3 out of 19 field goal attempts. 3 out of 17 field goal attempts. Poor Dwayne Dedman. He played 9 minutes, missed all 5 of his shots, had 4 fouls, and was minus 17. That's the ball game from the Heat perspective. The Grizzlies started Santi Aldama and Steven Adams. That's what I predicted would happen. If you listen to Fast Break Breakfast episode on Monday, where Grizzlies Heat is the Fast Break Breakfast Bowl, because Chuck is a Heat guy from Miami. And we were talking about how the Grizzlies are going to be super short-handed. But traditionally, when Jaren isn't available, Brandon does not start because they're basically done with Steven Adams and Brandon Clark playing together. So Brandon Clark goes back to the bench. Santi Aldama gets to start. And Santi delivered. Santi with a double-double. He goes for 18 points and 10 rebounds and 2 assists, a steal, and a block. Makes a couple of big three-pointers. Also put the game away. Santi got the hammer nail coffin play where he bully balled Kyle Lowry. Just took him straight to the bucket, protected the basketball, so Kyle Lowry couldn't get the rip down or the steal. Nothing Kyle Lowry could do. Santi had a lot of plays like this in this game where he was under control, used his size, was patient, did not commit offensive fouls, and he just overpowered his opponent. The Grizzlies had size on this Miami Heat squad, but the Heat were healthy. The Heat had their preferred starting five. I mean, yeah, they don't have Victor Oladipo, but who knows when they're going to have Victor Oladipo. This was a healthy Heat squad, and the Grizzlies caught them napping. We've seen it before. If you follow the NBA, this happens all the time, where a healthy team is playing a very shorthanded team, and the healthy team does not perform and gets upset. Grizzlies do it with these awesome contributions from Aldama, who, by the way, the home road splits for Aldama are very, very stark. He averages 5 more points per game in home games than he does in road games. At home this season, Santi Aldama averages 12.4 points per game on 51, 36, 78 shooting splits. On the road, he averages 7.5 points per game on 41, 31, 65 shooting splits. One of the key things about this win on a second night of a back-to-back and with your players missing is Taylor Jenkins told us before the game that this is the last time we are probably going to be missing a bunch of players, or at least Jaren Jackson Jr. on the second night of a back-to-back. The Grizzlies don't have another back-to-back until January, so he predicts this will be the last time that Jaren is held out on the second night of a back-to-back for load management. The Grizzlies are always going to be prudent and conservative when it comes to these injury calls on playing on the second nights. They don't want to overload Ja Morant. And, of course, as we know, it's an organizational philosophy to depend on your team, on your entire roster, to give the guys at the end of the bench, get that hands-on experience, to make mistakes on the court, so down the line they'll be able to contribute. When we saw it last year, Zaire Williams got off to a rough start to the season. End of the year, very solid contributor. It already feels like it's happening with David Roddy. I mean, David Roddy was rough. He took his lumps. The Grizzlies had some rough moments with him on the court, but he's getting better and better. He's making more and more of those three-pointers. You're seeing the game slow down for him. You're also seeing him, I mean, he overpowered Jimmy Butler, very similar to Santi Aldama, taking Kyle Lowry to the rack. There was a play in the first half where Roddy, who got his first career start, by the way, where Roddy just takes Jimmy Butler down in the paint, uses his shoulders to clear some space, calmly, patiently, makes an easy 5-footer. You like to see it. By the way, the Grizzlies, this is their 9th starting lineup used so far this season. Steven Adams returned to the starting lineup after getting the night off against the Pistons. Weirdly, Steven Adams, you would think, okay, no Jaren, no Ja, and if you tell us we're going to get the win, we're going to overpower the Heat, well, then you would predict Steven Adams had a big game. I mean, Steven Adams, statistically, didn't do a whole lot. 8 points and only 4 rebounds. A weirdly small number of rebounds for Steven Adams. A weirdly small number of rebounds for the entire team. The Grizzlies only had 4 offensive rebounds. That's their fewest in a game this season. They only made 8 3-pointers. This is not your typical formula for a Grizzlies victory. They were 8 for 32 from 3. Meanwhile, the Heat made 14 3-pointers. The Grizzlies only got 4 offensive rebounds, so they weren't living on those second chance points. But their defense shut down the Heat. You saw these inexperienced lineups. You saw lineups with multiple rookies. You had Kennedy Chandler and David Roddy playing together. You had Kennedy Chandler playing with Vince Williams Jr. And to my eye, their rotations were great. Their effort was really, really good. They were defending really, really well. And that's how you hold the Heat to 93 points for the game. The Heat in the final 3 quarters only scored 61 points. Just a fantastic win for the Memphis Grizzlies with all the context of who was available, knowing it's your second night of a back-to-back, and to get that third straight win. Grizzlies have now won 5 out of 6. That's coming on the heels of them losing 4 out of 5. So the Grizzlies have bounced back, are 15-9 on the season. It didn't feel like in the first quarter it was going to go this way for the Grizzlies. I mean, the Grizzlies were, I believe, 5.5-point underdogs. The Heat came out on fire. Caleb Martin made his first 4 3-pointers. The Heat, I believe, were 6 out of 7 from 3 to start the game. They got up by 11, but the Grizzlies just stayed the course. They erased that lead totally in the first quarter. Then you got that second unit coming in. You forced a bunch of turnovers. Tyus Jones had a huge first half on the way to that career-high scoring game. He had 17 and 7 in just the first half. Also, Kennedy Chandler set his career-high scoring in just the first half. His career high was 6. He had 7 in the first half. He had that impressive back-to-back possession performance in the second quarter where he got a drive all the way to the bucket coming off of a pump fake. And then on the next possession, with a little bit of space probably created where the defender remembered that he got blown by the previous possession, he knocks down a 3-pointer. And then similarly, I thought in the third quarter, you got to remember he had just a fantastic move. It was like 3 or 4 minutes left in the third quarter where the Heat had been playing some zone and Chandler just used his quickness to snake through the defense for a layup, just exploded towards the basket. I mean, just easily the best and most impressive game of Kennedy Chandler's career so far. I guess the big stat from this one that I haven't mentioned yet, the Grizzlies outscored the Heat by 38 points on points in the paint. That's how you win with only 9 free throw attempts, 8 made 3-pointers, and 4 offensive rebounds. I mean, good job, by the way, of the Grizzlies making all 9 of their free throws. A perfect night from the line. We don't get many of those. But the Grizzlies outscored the Heat 62-24 in the paint. The Grizzlies got contributions up and down the roster where the Miami Heat did not. The end of the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter, the Grizzlies had a 17-4 extended run that opened it up. In that, you had a couple of big plays from Xavier Tillman. Tillman had another nice game, his second nice game in a row. He scored after Kennedy Chandler steal where Chandler got on the floor quickly to pick up a loose ball where I believe Gabe Vincent dribbled off his foot. And he gives it to Tillman, and Tillman does kind of a slow Euro step, a Kyle Anderson-esque finish on the break. And then on the next possession, Xavier Tillman got one of the Grizzlies' 4 offensive rebounds of the game. It was a strong one, and he gets the putback off of that to help the Grizzlies grow that lead as they went into the fourth quarter ahead. The fourth quarter, it truly was a rock fight, with both teams struggling for points. I made a note that, again, I was so impressed with the defense of some of these units featuring your not traditionally in the rotation guys. There was a Tyus Jones, Kennedy Chandler, David Roddy, Santi Aldama, Brandon Clark lineup that I thought, again, just moving really, really well, forcing the Heat into some difficult shots and forcing a good number of turnovers. That was very encouraging, positive thing to see. And then in this fourth quarter rock fight, it was, getting a little nervous for us Grizzlies fans. We're maybe starting to think we're emotionally hedging to be like, well, it's a good effort even if we lose this one. You had a moment where Brandon Clark, with the Grizzlies up 5, picked up an offensive foul. Then he got called for a technical foul. And I was thinking, oh no, here come the Heat. But Jimmy Butler misses the technical free throw. The Grizzlies get a stop. And then Santi Aldama, part of his big game, makes a corner 3-pointer. The next offensive possession, Tyus Jones sets that career high with a running layup, and that stretches it back open to a 10-point lead. It wasn't a great game statistically for every player, particularly not for Dillon Brooks. Okay? In a tough game like this where you're struggling for offense, where you're missing Ja and Jaren and Desmond, we knew Dillon was going to have to shoot a lot, and that he did. He did not make many of his field goal attempts. But I'm going to say those misses, those are some professional misses. it is my job to get the ball up on the rim, even though he failed at that a couple times, a few air balls. Dillon had to shoot. He was given the thankless job, which I assume he enjoys, of, all right, there's 10 seconds left on the shot clock. Dillon, just do something. We're playing good defense. We just need you to get the ball up on the rim. Just put something up. I'm not going to say it was a good game. It was not a good game from Dillon. It absolutely was not a good basketball game from Dillon, but I understand it. He did what had to be done. And he got some good scores going to the basket, just the jumper was not falling whatsoever. He made 2 out of his 11 three-point attempts. Both of the makes were on very clean looks. I think it's helpful. It's helpful for me, and maybe I'm being too much of an apologist. It's helpful for me sometimes to think of not look at the individual shooting attempts, just look at it as a team game, which it is, and know someone has to put the ball up. And you don't want it to be Steven Adams. You don't want it to be maybe David Roddy. I mean, David Roddy was 2 for 8 from the field. If it can't be Tyus Jones, if Santi Aldama isn't getting a good look, it's going to be Dillon, and Dillon was firing. He also had 5 turnovers. Again, kind of rough, but he did the dirty work. He got his hands dirty, put up a pretty gross game, but it was good enough for the Grizzlies when Tyus is making his shots, when Santi's having a big game. It was enough, as the defensive effort was strong enough to get the Grizzlies a victory. This win improved the Grizzlies to 9-2 at home, and they have 4 more home games following this one. They play the Thunder on Wednesday night. They play the Pistons on Friday night. For that Pistons game on Friday night, I'll be hosting a Grizzlies watch party with my buddies from Fast Break Breakfast over at Noble's Beer Hall. If you're in the Nashville area, coming on to Noble's Beer Hall on Friday at 7 p.m. for Grizzlies Pistons. This win was the Grizzlies' first win of the season on the second night of a back-to-back. It was their first win of the season without Ja Morant. They are now 1-3 without Ja Morant. The Grizzlies right now are in 3rd in the Western Conference. They're a half game ahead of the Nuggets. You really expect to win these next 2 home games. Konchar and Morant are going to be back. You are playing teams near the bottom of your conference, although the Thunder have won 3 straight games and are in the battle right now for a play-in spot. It's not a gimme game, but you expect to win this game, especially assuming you're going to be pretty close to full strength. Yes, still no Desmond Bane. He's not expected back for Wednesday. It's possible we see Zaire Williams. I think, if you look back to Grizzlies history with the injury reports, the guy returning from injury, his doubtful game usually precedes him being questionable the next game, and then most of the time, if memory serves correctly, that player will then play. So I would expect Zaire Williams to be questionable for the game on Wednesday, and maybe we will see our first minutes of the season. And then, again, Bane not supposed to be that far away. We're hoping he will return in this homestand. Because then, if you can do that, you got to like your chances in this Western Conference in the regular season. As a reminder, the Grizzlies haven't lost when they've started Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Dillon Brooks, and Steven Adams. Aldama was the 5th guy in all those lineups. The Grizzlies are 7-0 when those 5 start. But you assume you're going to continue to experience that success when Jaren is a part of that team. And with Zaire getting back, with Bane ready to return, this team looks well equipped to make a challenge. Possibly make a challenge for the 1 seed. Right now, you're a game behind the Suns. You're a half game behind the Pelicans. It's very, very close. You're only 2 games up from being in 9th. So there is this packed together clump of teams in the West right now. But with the Grizzlies battling injuries, you expect them to continue that fight for home court if everything goes well health-wise. Anyways, that is the full show for today. I appreciate you listening to this episode. Hope you're having a great Tuesday. Talk to you soon. Go Grizz.